Hello my friends, and welcome back to another Baldur's Gate 3 guide. Hope you're all doing well. Today, to celebrate the recent release of modding on consoles, I'm going to be going through and talking about each of the 69 available mods in the initial release of modding for console systems. I have gone through and reviewed each of these mods and tested them myself, at least the ones that needed to be tested. So I'm going to be talking about whether they are well implemented, what they actually do for you, and whether I think they're worth installing for your own playthroughs. Alright, let's just jump into the mod manager and get started looking at mods. So, now that we're in the mod manager, Larian has helpfully included a toggle here so that we can select only mods that are available on Mac and console for cross-platform play. So these are mods that anybody can use. You can play with your friends with them, even if you're on different systems, which is great. I will at some point be going through and doing a deeper dive into every mod, especially as more of them are approved for cross-platform release, but I'm going to start with these 60, which include some of the very most popular mods, and seems like a good place to start because they're available to everyone. Let me know also in the comments if there's a specific mod that you want me to take a look at in future. I'm going to start with the Improved UI mod. So the Improved UI mod is mostly a basis for other mods. The way that it works is it unlocks a lot of UI elements so that other mods can use them, but also at base allows you to violate certain restrictions that the game includes, like the size of characters, various body proportions, and stuff like that. So useful if someone is modding in larger races, for example, if you wanted to play a Furbolg or a Bugbear or something like that, but also really useful if you just want to make a ridiculously proportioned character. So the Improved UI mod is incredibly useful, of course, but mostly for its ability to allow you to use other mods. You're going to see it as a prerequisite mod for a lot of other things. All camp clothes and dyes lets you start with every single set of clothing and every dye unlocked from the beginning of the game. It gives you some chests in your camp with all of the camp clothes and dyes, so your characters can be in perfect drip right from the start. I actually personally really liked the moment when my party got to Baldur's Gate for the first time on my first playthrough, and my characters got to suddenly try out new fashions. It actually felt pretty awesome to go from like, oh, we've been out in the sticks in the wilderness going through this horrible situation and we're sort of dressed terribly, and now we've gotten to the elegant population center and can put on cool clothing. But of course that's more of a first time through thing, and afterwards you just want your characters looking nice. So the Camp Clothes and Dyes mod lets you do that right from the beginning of the game. Adjustable party limit lets you play the game with a party sized from between 1 and 16 characters. So most players are obviously going to use this to increase the number of characters that they're bringing with them, but you can also use it to hard limit yourself to only one character to really enforce a solo mode run, for example. The adjustable party limit obviously makes the game easier. Having more party members in a playthrough is going to make your party that much stronger, but it also lets you test out cool combinations of different abilities that you might not use otherwise, or bring some goofier builds without falling behind and let you maybe drag some characters that are otherwise dead weights through the harder difficulty levels. So adjustable party limit both lets you just do silly things and lets you also experiment with things you wouldn't otherwise be able to do. I found that this works very well. I didn't have any instability or crashes with it in the times that I have tested it. And I also found that when you have multiple companion characters, the world barks work pretty seamlessly. I got like one instance of dialogue overlapping where two characters tried to talk at once who weren't supposed to, but I've had that in the vanilla game as well. So for the most part, this works very well, just bringing your whole companion crew along with you. They will all sort of seamlessly interact with NPCs and talk naturally. So really fun, helps you make sure you're getting every character's quest and everything as well. Highly recommend adjustable party limit. Hair Unlocked unlocks a bunch of NPC hairstyles, so you can use, for example, Karlach's hair here on your main character. So if you've been wanting to do that, this one works. I noticed like a couple weird clipping issues with some of the hairstyles that weren't really meant to work with some of the helmets and stuff, but other than that, this mod worked very well and let you use hairstyles from all over the game. My personal favorite aesthetics mod is actually Faerun Colors, with the 5th most popular mod on this list. This gives you a ton of additional dyes for the game, and these dyes not only look really good, like I just really like the way that the dyes look with a lot of the armors and clothings in the game, they also use the place names and deities from Faerun, and the mod author has for the most part used the actual canonical color schemes associated with those deities or followers of those deities and people from those places. So not only do these dyes actually just look great, they also work really well in the sense of sort of building world immersion, in my opinion, because for the most part, these are canonical color schemes that you would actually see people wearing in the world of Baldur's Gate. The Cheater's Ring, well, it lets you cheat. It lets you auto-succeed on any skill check, instantly kill any enemy by doing a huge amount of damage, cast any spell, use any ability, summon any item. You can choose to abuse this as much or as little as you want, basically anything that you want from a cheat engine, the Cheater's Ring has available. The main use for obviously, one use is just to cheat your way through the game, so if you are struggling on certain difficulty settings, or you just want to do something goofy, or just experience the story, the Cheater's Ring will let you do that without having to engage with the combat in the game really at all. But also, if you want to just do weird stuff, the Cheater's Ring can let you try out combinations of abilities that couldn't exist otherwise, summon weird items to have at specific points in the game. So you could use, like, I don't know, the Ring of Feywild sparks right from the beginning in order to have auto wild magic surges, and this is one of the easiest ways to make that sort of thing happen. So this is just a useful utility. If you have any cheating that you want to do, then the Cheater's Ring will let you do that. Unlocked Level Curve allows you to level your characters up to level 20, the maximum available in tabletop. The Unlocked Level Curve mod does this in a way that I think works pretty well. It adds in some of the abilities available to classes in tabletop, so you will see, like, fighters have abilities that they would be getting at higher levels. And so your class features will also level up as they would. What it doesn't do is give you access to higher level spells, because adding in new spells to Baldur's Gate is actually quite difficult with the modding tools, is my understanding. So for spellcasters, you're going to be getting higher level spell slots. You'll get spell slots for spells levels 7 through 9, but you won't get new spells, so you'll just be upcasting lower level spells. That said, this lets you do all kinds of weird combinations. You can multi-class more aggressively because you have more levels to work with. You get more feats, so you can take some of the weirder feats in the game without feeling like you're really hurting your character by removing something that they critically need to be able to be successful. And some of the class features for non-spellcasting characters and for spellcasting characters are really cool, and getting to play with those is really fun. So Unlock Level Curve, great. Obviously, it's going to make the end game quite a bit easier because your party is going to continue to level up, but it will also let you try out weird combinations of characters or interesting ways to build new classes to allow you to experience the game in ways that you maybe couldn't before, and I think that's one of the coolest things that a mod can do. Become a Vampire turns you into a vampire, and I found that this mod works very well. It does exactly what you want. You can turn into a bat, you can use all the vampire powers, and it just turns you into a vampire right from the beginning of the game. Obviously, this makes the early game especially quite a bit easier. You will find that the powers don't necessarily keep up in the late game, but are a huge benefit to the early game, so your balance may take a hit in terms of how well the campaign is balanced when you use this mod, but the real point is, does it work for experiencing the power fantasy of vampiring around the world? And in my opinion, it does. Double XP gives your character double XP. You level up twice as fast, you get twice as much XP from every source. This is mostly for use in combination with the Unlock Level Curves mod, so that you can reach level 20 at a reasonable time. But I will warn you that this will kind of ruin the progression curve of the game. You're going to feel like your character runs out of things to learn pretty quickly because they're going to be way over leveled. So both this will make encounters easier and you'll run out of the feeling of progression as you go through the game. In my opinion, if you want to cheat, you're better off just using the cheater's ring and customizing your cheating to what you're going to have fun with. This will, I think, make the game less fun overall when you're using the double XP mod. This Lydia's heads, this is one specific face. It's just a mod that gives you one face. Looks pretty nice if that's what you're looking for. Weightless gold makes gold weightless, which is a huge quality of life improvement in my opinion. Baldur's Gate didn't really do anything interesting with carry weight. It's not like the amount of stuff you can carry is a meaningful restriction on your strategy or anything like that. We don't really have to carry camping supplies or anything, so weightless gold just takes away an annoyance from the game, because carry weight, as implemented in Baldur's Gate 3, I just don't think is a very interesting mechanic, and getting rid of it as much as possible I think just makes the game more fun. Kay's hair mod, this is just a bunch more hairstyles, and I found that, again, there were a couple weird clipping issues when I tried these with some helmets. I didn't do super extensive testing, but mostly they look good, so more hair options is always great for your characters. The Spellblade School mod introduces a new school of magic for wizards, a 9th school of magic focused on melee attacks. The Spellblade School gives you the ability to summon a magical weapon, parry enemy attacks, take less damage from enemy attacks, gain weapon proficiencies, and you also get an additional reaction starting at level 2. If this sounds like a list of a lot of powerful abilities, it is. The Spellblade School mod is very, very unbalanced. This mod is extremely powerful. This class is extremely powerful. The mechanics work, which is great, so I will say that this mod was fun to play, and if you're looking for a character that's just ludicrously powerful, then the Spellblade does a very good job. You both get to cast spells and do melee attacks. Is it stronger than Swordsbard is in vanilla? Debatably, I think probably a little bit, because an extra reaction passively is just a ridiculous class feature. But the Spellblade School mod works very well, so if you are looking for a power trip, then I would recommend it. Otherwise, if you're looking for a balanced class experience, then steer clear, because this one is absolutely broken. Diamond Dice is a dice mod, adds another set of dice. These ones look pretty good. The Mystic class is a class from Tabletop. So this is a class that was introduced in an Unearthed Arcana expansion, so that's something that Wizards released as playtest content, and it is a psionic caster. So the Mystic class has spells that are based on psionics, just like Illithid psionics. And it uses spell points to cast them, which is more like a mana system from another game, rather than the traditional spell system from Dungeons & Dragons that other spellcasters use. The Mystic mod I have found to be both very fun and very well in line with the balance of Baldur's Gate. It's a tabletop class, so it makes perfect sense that it works well with balance, because it was designed to use in this system, and this is, in my opinion, a quite faithful adaptation of the Mystic from the tabletop version of the Mystic into Baldur's Gate 3, so it works very well. I think that the Mystic class is probably the best class mod out there. It's just adds a 13th base class to the game in a way that feels very seamless and smooth, and in my opinion is super fun to play. If there's interest, I'll probably do a build guide for Mystics at some point in the future, because I think that the Mystics are very well implemented and very fun. Hair extensions mod is more hairstyles, but these actually tack on to to existing hairstyles, and so work as actual extensions. And I think they're cool. It gives you a little more customizability for your character's hairstyles, and you can kind of mix and match different pieces in order to make unique hairstyles. Secret Scrolls adds scrolls for every single spell in the game, or almost every spell in the game. Many spells in Baldur's Gate don't have scrolls available, so this mod adds scrolls for all of them, which I think is cool in that it lets you access a lot more spells that you wouldn't otherwise access, but definitely some of the spells in the game didn't have scrolls for a reason, and this will, because of the way that wizards were implemented in Baldur's Gate 3, allow wizards to learn spells that aren't normally on their spell list. A lot of spells that aren't normally on their spell list. So you do have to be careful a little bit with the balance on secret scrolls, but if you were looking for a scroll of a specific spell, then it's definitely very useful. It also adds some scrolls that should exist that didn't exist, things like shield and counterspell. You can now actually use as you can now actually learn as a wizard, which you couldn't before, from a scroll, because no scrolls had been implemented in the game, so Secret Scrolls sort of fills that gap. I think it does a good job, though, again, there are some balance issues with scrolls of certain spells existing that maybe shouldn't. Better inventory UI adds a bunch of icons to inventory items to allow you to better differentiate things. So it makes potions more distinguishable from grenades, makes usable items more distinguishable from junk and clutter and sort of vendor trash, and overall just gives you a slightly better sense at a glance of what's in your inventory. I think that this is a pretty good setup. You can see sort of how it's set up here with like mini icons for various consumables and things like that. And items that you can actually eat or use in-game have consumable icons on them. I haven't personally found this to be a huge issue in my own play, though my inventories are famously a disaster, as you can see from any of my build guides, but your mileage may vary, and if you were looking to be able to more easily distinguish items, I think that better inventory UI does a very good job of that. Weightless consumables, another huge quality of life mod. Again, I'm personally in favor of just getting rid of carry weight entirely, and this goes one way towards it. There is a later mod that just lets you increase carry weight, which I prefer to all of these weightless mods in general, but however you want to handle that challenge, the weightless mods these various mods all work, and they do what they say they do. Better target info basically condenses the info panel that you're going to see under enemies. So that's the vanilla info panel, but this one will show you like the resistances and stuff at a glance, which is really helpful, especially if you forget what enemies have specific resistances very frequently. So mostly because this information is always available by right-clicking and inspecting the character, putting this front and center helps you just play through much smoother. So I really like better target info for resistances. Gale's wizardly updo. If you thought that Gale needed a different hairstyle, this gives him one. I did test this very, very briefly and found that it clips through some hoods, so if that bothers you, this might not be the mod for you, but it will give him a different hairstyle. Might not be all hoods, I only tested it with one. Inspirations Uncapped removes the cap on the number of inspirations that you can store. So you can have a whole pile of rerolls available for important skill checks. Whether you like this or not, I think, again, depends on how interesting you find having to roll for specific skill checks, having to really prepare for specific skill rolls. There are enough inspirations in the game that most parties will just end up with infinite rerolls if you have uncapped inspirations, because you will get multiple from certain events. Like if you have multiple characters that get an inspiration from it, then you'll get multiple inspirations. It'll stack up. You can get tons and tons of inspirations available. And if you have reasonable skills, then you won't be failing rolls that often and needing to use your inspirations. So this effectively makes late game skill checks trivial because you can reroll them infinitely. How interesting you find having to fail skill checks, of course, is going to vary from player to player, and this is one reasonably in-system and lore-friendly way to make skill checks a lot easier to pass. This is another hair mod. I didn't test this one because I had sort of gotten bored of testing hair mods at this point, but from the pictures they look pretty good to me, so, you know, if any of these hairs appeal to you, then try them. There used to be a bug where if you had heterochromatic tieflings, then one of their eyes would be weirdly glowing, which I thought looked pretty cool, but Larian removed. This restores that, so if you want to be the edgiest and coolest tiefling in sort of the most mid-90s gothic style and just look like you just came out of Hot Topic, then Glowing Eyes Restored is absolutely the way to go, I guess, because you can have a single glowing eye. Who doesn't want that? Seems dope. Moving on to the second page, the Underwear of Rituals gives you all of the normal ritual spells as a slotless underwear item, so you can just have those all the time. Great utility spell, stops you from having to have a character that needs these or use like toggle items or drink potions for them. Honestly, this is quality of life and I think is really useful, so I highly recommend using that. Visible Shields makes your shields visible when you're walking through the world. The shields in Baldur's Gate, some of them look quite silly to me, so it's going to depend on which shield you actually have equipped, whether you want this item or not. But Visible Shields, I think, is a really cool mod that makes your characters look much more like they are actually adventurers out in the world. So I recommend it, though some of the shields look a little bit goofy when Visible Shields is turned on. The Mystic Expansion mod adds 3 homebrewed subclasses and a bunch of homebrewed spells to the Mystic class. So you need the Mystic class mod in order to use this one, and this adds some homebrew designs of the mod author's design into the mod. I haven't played with these extensively myself. I've looked at each of them in the character creator and sort of reviewed their abilities, and I think that these are actually quite well designed and reasonably well balanced, although I will caveat that that's not based on extensive playtesting experience, but given my extensive experience with the subject matter, I think that even my at-a-glance opinion is probably pretty decent. The Mystic homebrew mod, unlike the rest of the Mystic mod, is not based on tabletop content. It's not based on the playtest content that was released by Wizards, but it feels pretty well in theme for that, so I recommend this mod. I will say that Mystic is a very complicated class, and already has 6 subclasses, so whether you really need more stuff in the Mystic mod is going to be kind of up to you. Probably I would play once without this mod, and then if you are looking for even more stuff to do with the Mystic, then play with this mod, or just install it and do an all Mystic party with all of the different things right from the beginning. I don't think that you're going to notice a huge difference in quality between the officially created content and the mod authors created content, because I think they did a great job. The Origin Feats mod allows you to add a feat to your character at level 2. Now, this only works for the default 12 classes. It doesn't work for modded classes, so it won't work with the Mystic mod, but basically it adds a feat at level 2 to every character, which gives you a little bit more customization for your character's feats. This is based on kind of an optional house rule in tabletop D&D where every character starts with a feat. And so this mod kind of duplicates that. It happens at level 2 because of modding restrictions, in sort of hard-coded restrictions in Baldur's Gate rather than at level 1, but close enough. I really like this mod, both in terms of how it works, because it's implemented reasonably well, and in terms of game balance, because I think that one of the weakest designs in 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons is feats, and sort of how few you get, and how they're tied into your character's power level progression with ability score improvements. Most characters have to take 2 ability score improvements in order to max out their attribute, which means you don't get to play around with any of the interesting feats available in the game. This mod sort of solves that by giving you a feat that you can have right away, and lets you play with some of the lesser used feats without feeling like you're sacrificing a huge amount. My recommendation for this is to use it to pick something goofy and fun, take Charger or Mobile or whatever, in order to get to play with some of the cool feats that you wouldn't be able to otherwise, because you're just so priced into taking the normal feats in order for your characters to actually function. Great mod. Obviously, it's a little bit of a cheat, but if used judiciously, I think just makes the game more fun. Next up, there's a bunch of cosmetic mods. The normal half-illithid mod removes the appearance changes for half-illithid, so if you hate the way your character looks after you go squid, then this gets rid of it. NPC eye, skin, and hair colors lets you use the eye colors and skin tones from the companion characters and from some notable NPCs when creating your custom character, so it gives you a little bit more customizability for your custom character, and you can borrow their eye colors as well in order to give yourself a more unique appearance. And obviously, the more different options you have for character creation, the better, so this one is fun and lets you have a reference point for what you're actually turning your character to, because you have seen those characters before. NPC hairs unlocked. This is another hair unlocking mod. I like the one on the first page better overall. This one has fewer hairstyles in it, so I would recommend using the other one rather than this one, though I think there's one in here that isn't in the first one, so if that's the specific one you want, then I guess go with it. Carry weight extra effectively gives you infinite carry weight on every character, so you can just pick up everything and carry it around. This is especially useful if you're playing a low-strength main character, so you can have your main character pick up stuff, not have to juggle it back and forth between party members. It also increases the stack limit for items, so you can stack a whole bunch of an item in a single inventory square. The stack limit in Baldur's Gate is not... most items there just aren't enough of for stack limit to be meaningful, unless you're doing a lot of cheating in items. But that is a nice quality of life change. But mostly this just gets rid of carry weight as a mechanic. I've already talked about how I think carry weight as implemented in Baldur's Gate is a fairly pointless mechanic, because it doesn't restrict the player in any way that increases your strategy. You just have to spend a lot of time irritatingly juggling items back and forth between characters, but it doesn't add any meaningful strategic restrictions. If you think that that makes me morally weak, then, you know, feel free to tell me in the comments, but for the rest of us who just prefer not to spend a bunch of time wasting time juggling items, we can just install this mod and live our lives in happiness. Great mod, definitely worth using if you, like me, find carry weight in Baldur's Gate to be annoying and somewhat pointless. Paladins Have Gods does what it says on the tin and gives paladins unique dialogue options for deities. You can select a deity and make those dialogue choices as a paladin. It unlocks a ton of dialogue options, and it just makes sense. It's true that in 5th edition, some paladins are sworn to an ideal rather than a deity, but many are sworn to a deity, so being able to do that just makes sense, and paladins should equally have access to the deity-specific dialogue choices as clerics. This just fixes that. Great change, probably should have been in the base game, to be honest, but that's what mods are for. I love this, and will play with it pretty much anytime I play a paladin. The Celestial Warlock is a warlock subclass that's ported from tabletop. This is an existing tabletop subclass for warlocks, and the mod author has as their explicit goal with this mod to make it as faithful a translation as possible. They did have to change a couple small mechanics to work with Baldur's Gate's exact mechanics, but for the most part, this is a direct translation of a tabletop subclass, so it's as balanced as any other subclass in the game, and it's a flavorful and fun subclass. So the Celestial Warlock, I think, is really fun to play. Gives you a more sort of healing and party support focused warlock, and works really well as a warlock subclass. It's direct from tabletop, and the mod author did a great job of translating it. Similar to the Mystic, although a little bit less expansive. This is just tabletop content in Baldur's Gate, which is great. The Path of Nightmares dice, I mean, if you like the look of these dice, then you can definitely use them. It's a little on the nose for me for Dark Urge, but maybe that is exactly the direction that you want to take your Dark Urge. Containers Extended gives you a bunch of auto-sort containers, and this is the best inventory management mod out there, in my opinion. Containers Extended gives you containers that just auto-sort different weapon and item categories, exactly the way that the alchemy and food pouches do by default. So your characters will just have their items sort to specific containers by default. You can still search for the items in their inventory, even if it's in a container, so if you don't want to add an extra click to get specific items, you can do that. But this just makes inventory management so much easier because your items will just automatically be in one place. Highly recommend Containers Extended. It just makes the game so much smoother to play. Again, I kind of wish that this was vanilla functionality, or something that we could maybe get. Like, you could get bags of holding in the game and designate them for only certain kinds of items or something like that. But mods just fix that problem anyways, so it just makes managing items, if you have a lot of clutter in your inventory, a breeze. Great mod, definitely worth it for quality of life. The Spell List Additions mod adds a bunch of spells that are not on characters' spell lists, not on specific classes' spell lists, that either should be because they are in tabletop, but for whatever reason were removed in Baldur's Gate from that class's spell list, or that the author thought just made flavor sense. I think for the most part, this is a pretty good list of additions. It's a lot of spells that, when you think about it, kind of make sense for that character to be able to have, like Bards getting Color Spray just makes sense to me. There's a couple that stand out as slightly odd. Bards getting Command does make them much stronger at low levels and gives them an even more powerful option. It also makes Sword Bards with Command not have to spend a magical secret slot on that. But for the most part, these just make sense and give you a lot more sort of versatility with your spellcasters for spells that they probably should be able to cast anyways, in terms of the flavor of the spells. Obviously, a little bit of a cheat makes your party more powerful, but I think most of these additions make sense. The NPC and outfit-inspired dyes mod adds a bunch of colorways from specific NPC clothings and from specific equipable clothing as dyes, so you can make other items look like certain default item colors. There's a lot of items that have default colors that you can't duplicate with dyes, and so being able to do that on other items I think is pretty cool, and being able to duplicate some NPC outfits is great. Obviously, more dyes is great, and I think that these dyes all in general look pretty good. The Underdark dice, I think these dice look pretty cool. They actually look kind of like a set of dice that I have in real life. Clear Map gets rid of the grid overlay when you open a map. So like in vanilla, you can see there's a little grid when you look at the map of Baldur's Gate. And this gets rid of it. Also changes the size of icons so they're a little bigger, and makes your characters and stuff a little clearer on the map. I personally like the grid because it looks like a tabletop map, and I like that aesthetic, but if you don't like it, this gets rid of it. The Better Dying mod gives you a preview for when you're dying an item, so you can see what it will look like on the character who's dying, or who's got the item equipped. So by default, you can see, you just don't see the item when you're dying, and the Better Dying mod shows you a preview, which is amazing. It makes it so much easier to tell if you're making a horrible monstrosity or something that looks good. Stops you from having to reload constantly or waste dies if you, like me, spend a lot of time trying to make your characters look pretty by playing dress-up dollies in the campsite. Next, one of my very favorite mods that's available on console, the playable Kuo-toa race. This not only looks ridiculous, and is just so funny, it actually has really cool and fun mechanics, which I'll let you experiment with yourself, but this race mod works well. The animations are surprisingly consistent, even though the facial animations were not designed for the Kuo-toa. And so I actually think that this mod works really well and is really, really fun to play with. And of course, who doesn't want to be a weird fish guy running around? The Better Top Bar mod, it's sort of similar to the Better Targeting mod, where it shows you a little more information in the top bar. So you can see here the vanilla experience just shows you characters without like exact numbers of hit points and stuff, whereas this one compacts it a little bit and shows you exact hit points and their armor class values in the thing. I personally find this a little too cluttered. The exact hit points are nice, but just like all of this information really small, I don't really love, but I recommend experimenting with this mod to see if you like it more in terms of how it displays the information in combat. I think people often underestimate how much that kind of UI element and information display affect how much fun they're having and how well they're doing in combat. When you I think XCOM has this a lot of the time, where when you install a mod that shows you exact enemy hit points, the game gets a lot easier because you don't have to sit there counting. And so this kind of mod is really good, even if I personally find this exact implementation of it a little bit cluttered. The Fireproof Karlach mod turns her natural fire resistance into fire immunity, which to me just makes sense. She's supposed to be so hot to the touch that she burns, so it would make sense that her actual body isn't affected by that level of heat. So having her be immune to fire just makes sense from a flavor perspective. Obviously, it makes her more powerful, but I think this just makes sense from a flavor perspective. Better Tooltips mostly gives you more information about items when you mouse over them in your inventory. It lets items sort of tell you what kind of item they are. So for example, the gloves of archery now say that they are gloves, which for some kinds of items, which have a little bit unclear naming convention, can actually be fairly useful. What this mod doesn't do is fix all of the tooltip errors present in the game, where things just say they do stuff other than what they do. It, I think, might have adjusted a couple of them, but there's still definitely some tooltip errors present, so Better Tooltips is a mildly useful quality of life update, but doesn't just fix tooltips, which is the mod I was really hoping that this one would be. Eye colors and horn makeup for tieflings. Again, these are just more cosmetic mods, and which ones look best to you are going to be, of course, up to you. And then finally, on page 2, the Bag of Holding makes everything inside of it weightless. This is a magic item in tabletop D&D that Tav famously complains about not having one of. Well, now you can have one. So the Bag of Holding makes everything weightless. I prefer the extra carry weight mod combined with the containers mod for inventory management, but this is an alternate solution for dealing with the carry weight problem in Baldur's Gate 3. And moving on to page 3, the add-on for better inventory UI adds more icons to let you sort items. So it's going to let you sort items into even more categories, like different drinks and food are now sorted into different categories and stuff, which I think is pretty useful. So if you're using better inventory UI, I definitely do recommend this one. It just makes it even clearer what items are what. Though again, the the different containers, the auto-sort containers, I find mostly solve the problem that this was trying to solve in the first place, but both is even better. So, you know, you will be able to use as many different inventory management solutions as your game can handle and as you think are going to help you. The Remembrance Warlock is a homebrew warlock. This is basically warlock with a few bard talents and a few bard class features and a few rogue class features added on. You get to play a warlock with expertise in a couple skills, with rogue's reliable talent starting at level 10, with bard's magical secrets starting at level 6. And actually, these class features fit together to make a pretty reasonably balanced warlock subclass. It's a little stronger than the other warlock subclasses, in my opinion, but not hugely so. And it lets you play sort of more a skill-focused warlock, which is something that's not really available in the default game. But your warlock can maybe be a lockpicking character, can be a dialogue character in a way that default warlocks are able to, but not as well. It also gives you a list of... It kind of balances the powerful class features by having relatively weak spells, and I think that that's a pretty cool way to balance a warlock subclass, because it gives you relatively weak spells for a warlock subclass as packed spells, to balance out the super powerful class features, though Magical Secrets more or less fixes that as well. The Origin Dialogue tags adds a tag when you are choosing a dialogue option based on your origin, which is great. I think that should be in vanilla. It's already there for like racial options or deity specific dialogue options, so it makes perfect sense that when you are using a dialogue that only one character can say, that you actually know that, so you are getting fun little moments where you know that this character is saying something specific to them. Better Context Menu gives you little icons and a slightly different render when you're doing a context menu action. I actually don't know how this works on console, what these context menus look like on consoles. So whether you're using this on, when you're using this on console, it may look a little bit different. Personally, I don't think this is super necessary. I find these icons a little bit distracting, actually. But if you find that they look better to you, then definitely that can be pretty useful. Gale's beard being fixed. This is something that definitely bothered me, was that Gale gets the patchiest beard ever when he talks, because his chin clips through his beard. And this fix actually does work very well to stop that from happening, so Gale no longer looks quite so scruffy when he's actually speaking to you. Whether you like that or not, you know, is really up to you. I found it a little bit odd, because he's so well-groomed otherwise, that his beard would be so patchy. So I like this fix a lot. Dynamic sidebar lets you resize the sidebar. If you are using the increased party size limit mods, then this will be really, really useful to show all of your party members if you have a million party members all at once. So this is very useful if you are increasing your party size limit, and does exactly what it's supposed to do. Better containers give you a larger grid for containers. So when you have a lot of items in a container, it shows up as a much larger panel, so you don't have to scroll as much. Love it. Again, anything that save you clicks, anything that saves you clicks is something that I really like, and it's especially, I think, useful probably for console users for whom scrolling is even more annoying than for PC players, because just doing things on console in menus is always a little bit harder thanks to the restrictions that a controller places on your menuing. I'm going to skip over all of the dice on this page, because this page, as you can see, is mostly dice mods. Although I will say that my favorite of these is the Dolor dice. I think the Eldritch Blast color scheme looks really cool, actually, especially in-game where you get the 3D color effect. And the Rosy Morn dice, I think, actually just look awesome. That's such a cool color scheme and symbol already that putting them on dice makes a lot of sense to me. So those are my favorites, but obviously you should pick some that you like, or just go with the vanilla dice, which already look cool. I'm not going to review each dice set individually. Which leaves us with stackable barrels, which lets you stack barrels in your inventory up to 99. I will say, if you are carrying around 99 explosive barrels, then you maybe have a problem, but I suppose enemies won't be one of them. So for the degenerates who really want to use as much barrelmancy as possible, this does make it a little bit easier. And if you are carrying tons of barrels, even if you're only carrying 5, this helps clean up inventory clutter a lot. Finally, the Dragonborn scale colors. This gives you a lot more cool Dragonborn scale colors. I find that these are a little bit over done for my taste, but they do give you a lot of different options for how your Dragonborn can look, especially in their body, not just on their face, which I think is cool, because Dragonborn are such a unique and interesting looking race that being able to customize them more than the default game allows is really nice. So I do like that that's in. I do think that these colors are a little bit too aggressive for my personal taste, but obviously your mileage may vary. Finally, on page 4, the Smart Cunning Action mod lets you makes Cunning Action, when you have Cunning Action as a rogue, so the level 2 rogue feature that makes hide, disengage, and dash bonus actions, the default action still uses a standard action, and it's very easy to accidentally click on the wrong one and accidentally waste your action instead of your bonus action. So this makes the default for both buttons be a bonus action. In order to actually spend your action to use Cunning Action, you have to toggle off a passive. Which to use like dash, if for some reason you wanted to use your action instead of your bonus action to dash or hide, then you can still do that, but this just removes a fail case where sometimes you accidentally click the wrong button and waste an action that you weren't intending to. I like that. It's just a nice little fail safe for players who are finding that happening, so definitely very useful. And finally, the last mod that we're going to cover here is probably my very favorite mod out of all of these, because as you may have noticed, one of the things that I like in mods is removing UI annoyances. As a professional UI designer for many, many years, getting rid of those is something that I feel strongly about. And so the removing the any key menu from when you launch Baldur's Gate is a really good one and really helpful. Yes, it only saves you a single button press, but what did the designers think we were going to do other than interact with the main menu when we loaded the game? Why do we have to click through a splash screen to get to it? It makes no sense. This person agrees with me and got rid of it. So thank you to them, because it just saves a very minor annoyance, but a minor annoyance that happens every time you boot up the game. Alright, my friends, I hope that you have enjoyed this look at all of the available mods on consoles and for cross-platform play. I think there's a lot of fun stuff here. I recommend trying out the Mystic mod and the Celestial Warlock mod especially, because those give you a ton of cool new options for your characters, and a lot of the inventory management and cosmetic mods I find really cool and really useful for my actual play, because it just makes the game so much smoother when your items auto-sort, and it's more fun when your characters can look exactly the way that you hope that they can. Please let me know in the comments if there's specific mods that you want me to take a look at as I expand my looking at mods to more in future. I do intend to do a roundup of all of the best mods available on consoles and all the best mods available on PC only at some point, so let me know your favorites, and we will try to cover as many as possible. As always, of course, if you think that I missed something about one of these mods, let me know. If you think that I am a dirty, dirty cheater for getting rid of carry weight, then let me know in the comments so I can laugh at you. And other than that, I hope that you enjoyed the video. As always, of course, hit like and leave a comment for the algorithm, and of course you can subscribe for more Baldur's Gate 3 guides and other strategy game content. Cheers, my friends. I'll catch you next time.